King Alfonso's Book of Games, God and Board Games in the Middle Ages. On this episode of Board Game Faith, the bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersection of board games, religion, and spirituality. My name is Daniel Hilty.
And my name is Kevin Taylor.
And we are so glad to have you joining us for this episode. Thank you so much for pressing the button to join us on a kind of a different episode than we have done before, a little bit more historical episode, but one I'm excited about digging into. But first, Kevin, it's great to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. It's an optimistic time of the year, I think. Right?
Yeah,
we're almost to February. It's like, I don't know about the weather there, but here it's not quite as bitter, and of course it's never as bitter here, I think, as Missouri. We've got those mountains breaking up the cold weather. But, I think it's going to be a good year. Feeling good.
Good. The world is turning towards spring, at least in our corner of the world.
Yes, and, we are being geocentric. It's not geocentric. That'd be planet focused. We are being American centric, but got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and probably most of our listeners, wherever they are, can probably relate to that feeling of the year.
Did you see the New Zealand Prime Minister stepping down?
I did see that. We have a few listeners in New Zealand. Yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted you. What were you saying about that?
That's all.
Okay,
I was just showing that I do read the news.
That's good.
But because they use the metric in New Zealand, she's stepping down in the year 2024 and a half, I think.
I think
it's not the same time zones.
That is the best that my American understanding can grapple with. I think according to the Gregorian / New Zealand calendar or American calendar, I think that's right. And we're going to be just in time for Thanksgiving next month. So,
speaking of New Zealand, I know. Yeah. Speaking of New Zealand, Garfield Games.
Yeah, exactly. So, our listeners who've been listening for a while know that we like to often start our episodes, not every episode, with a little game or a skit where we kind of smash together different stuff. Today, we're going to be smashing together a little skit with a twist that we'll be sharing you in a moment. And as we often do, a randomly selected game from the top 200 of BoardGameGeek.com, which is the definitive website. I think that's probably most people
besides
would agree
our website is the
on board games.
definitive.
Besides our website, that's right, where we say board games are cool. And so today the randomizer picked number 152 on Board Game Geek, the 152nd most popular game ever, or best game ever according to Board Game Geek, which is Viscounts of the West Kingdom. And Kevin, I've never played this, but you have. You're such a great Garfield Games fan. Can you tell us a little bit about this game for me and others who don't know about it?
So they created a trilogy of games set in the medieval period, and this is my personal favorite. Now, if you're reading around, people have different opinions about their favorites. So there's paladins, architects, and viscounts. I like viscounts. I just think it's really cool. Nice, and in this game, it's got the rondel system. So you're going to go around, and based on where you land, you can take certain actions.
Yeah.
And that's determined by the card you play, gives you the value of which you move. But leave it to Garfield. They've also actually got 2 wheels in it, so you can go inner ring and go up into the castle that's in the middle, or you can go outer and build buildings.
Oh, so clever.
So you've got that going on. You've got a little card drafting, and then when you play a card, it's almost like a conveyor belt system. That certain cards will trigger, and then when they fall off the conveyor belt and go into your discard, certain things will happen as well.
That sounds so cool.
It's very cool. So like in Arc Nova, you kind of pick what you want to play. So that's got unofficially we could call a conveyor belt type thing where certain things happen in certain locations, and then they kind of drop off.
Yeah.
And so it's got a bit of that mechanic. going as well. And I think Viscounts predates Arc Nova. I'm sure various games have played with it. But yeah, so you've got those sort of two jarring things going on of conveyor belt actions, and you've got some set collection, card choosing, and then you've got this rondelle action. And you win by victory points, so it's a Euro game.
That sounds fantastic. Now I want to go get Viscounts of the... No dice. I want to go get Viscounts of the West Kingdom. No, that sounds awesome.
And it's not expensive. What I think I like about their games is none of them are for the game you get, it's a great value.
Yeah.
I forget, it might be $60, but you can play the heck out of this thing. So
I'd say I was going to add it to my wish list, but I already have it on my wish list. But it sounds great. Sounds great. I think I have most games on my wish list. Great. Thank you for the summary. I love it. So we are playing Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and the setting is appropriate for the game and also appropriate for our subject, a medieval court. We are members of medieval court getting ready to play Viscounts of the West Kingdom. But there's another twist, and the twist is we're going to also play the alphabet game. So everything that I say and Kevin says, when we go back and forth, the beginning of our statement has to start with the next letter of the alphabet. So the first person says something that starts with A, the next person says something that starts with B. If we get it right, you will hear the "you got it right" bell. And if you get it wrong, you'll get the dreaded, or take too long, you'll get the dreaded clown bell of doom. Or clown horn of doom.
And getting it wrong is not using the correct letter, is that right?
That's right. Or taking too long.
Okay.
Which
and
might
have you
be,
prepped any? Because
I've not. Except for maybe an A.
Written down phrases.
Yeah,
I've got an idea for A as well. Well, we
okay.
gotta figure out who starts.
I know. Okay, you know what? Let's do rock, paper, scissors. You want to do rock, paper, scissors?
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
One, two,
three.
Right.
Oh, we both got scissors. Okay, we're going to try again.
Okay,
here we go.
We're starting at the same time. Okay, right, here we go. One, two,
three, go. Oh.
You got
scissors, cut paper.
Right, so
okay.
you can pick.
I'm going to go. Okay. How about I will let you go first as the A, and then when we're done, we'll applaud, and that will get our episode officially started. Sound good?
Yes, and we should set it in Spain. So I'm going to be and I'm going to be a princess.
Okay.
So what's a good?
Maria.
Katerina? Is that a good Spanish?
Sure.
No, that sounds Russian.
Katerina.
What's a good Spanish? What's a good
Maria?
Why can't it? Isabel.
That sounds good.
I'm going to be Lady Isabel.
And I'm going to be the jester.
Doña Isabel.
Doña Isabel.
Okay.
I'll be the jester, Jeff. You ready?
Who's from Germany?
Here we go. Here we go. You ready?
Sorry.
All right, here we go.
Already laughing.
All right,
okay.
So you're starting as the princess Doña Isabel with the letter A, getting ready to play Viscounts of West Kingdom in the royal court in medieval Spain. What could go wrong? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Begin.
Alas, my cards are empty. I shall draw. Jeff, draw my card for me.
But, Princess, I don't know how to play the game. I'm so sorry. Can you please explain it to me?
Well, I said well. Okay, that didn't go. Could you grasp the manual there and check on the iconography on the back, and you will see that the deck we draw from is here.
Don't just order me around like your common servant, Princess. We've been lifelong friends. Could you at least use the word please?
Even ladyships such as I must recognize our equals. Double points. Jeffrey, of course. I shall call you Lord Jeffrey. I was finishing my dialogue.
Sorry.
Fine. I'll take it. Okay, let me get the manuscript for you. Here you go, Princess. Please explain to me now what I should do next in the game.
Garfield Games, publication 306, Página 5. After growing... And side note here, I have to admit I haven't played Viscounts in like 5 months. And my RAM memory storage is pretty low at this age. So I may mess some of this up. But anyway, I shall draw and place a card here on my tableau conveyor belt, so you shall do the same. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
How do I know where to place it?
In order here.
Just as I thought. Thank you, Princess. Now what?
Keep it up, Jeffrey. Keep it up. Well done, my lad.
Love you, Princess. Love you. You're the best game teacher ever.
Man, sort of, Jeffrey. Why do we play these games when we could play the real game? The game of love.
Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. Nay, nay, Princess. Our love can never be. You are a noble princess, and as we've established earlier in our conversation, I am but a lowly jester. Even if you give me the name Lord, it cannot hold weight beyond the royal court.
Olé, says Doña Isabel. She grasps a red piece of fabric and shakes it towards him like a, what do you call it? Bullfight. Yeah. Like Ernest Hemingway.
Pause here. Pause, time out. What does this have to do with the game, please?
Quietus.
I can't think.
I think that's the Latin accusative of quiet, but I don't actually know that. Just pretending.
Really? We're talking Latin now? Come on, Princess. You know I'm not educated in the finer languages of the court. I am merely a lowly jester, Jeff.
Beside me here, Jeffrey, and tell me some court gossip.
Timothy, the court carpenter, says that Bruce, the court butcher, has been seen recently down town purchasing frozen yogurt.
Umbrella? Did you say umbrella?
Verily, Princess, I don't know why you're talking about an umbrella. Could we get back to the game, please? I don't understand it.
Waste. What a waste of a fine young strapping man, Jeffrey. Fine.
Xylophone is what I wish I could play right now to entertain you, my dearest Princess.
Yon light breaks. I am in Shakespeare's land.
0 points, I fear, is what I will get at the end of this game.
I have to admit, I didn't want to play that before we played it, but I'm glad we did. That was pretty funny.
Good. You did. That was great. Good job, Kevin. Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for slogging through that.
Let's face it, we all deserve a big ol' hand.
Sorry.
Kevin, we did try the other time. We tried an AI skit, and just leave it to AI to not be as good as we thought it would be.
Yeah,
I mean, it's cool, but
yeah. We'd love to hear. Actually, whether we have skits and what kind of skits to have is something Kevin and I talk about a lot. Sidebar for our listeners: if you have any feelings about that, whether you like the skits or don't like them, whether you'd like to suggest something else, please let us know. We'd love to hear. You can give us feedback in different ways that we'll talk about them at the end, but we'd love to hear from you on that.
Right.
Or
and
anything.
I do try to do chapter markers, so if your podcast player or YouTube supports it, you can just skip to right here.
Here.
Oh, yo, that's the best part.
That episode, that skit, Kevin, that skit was it was a skit.
It was a skit.
So Kevin, today we are we're doing a historical dive. We're talking about King Alfonso X's Book of Games, or the Libro de los Juegos. I think would be said
Sounds right to me.
In Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but yeah.
I think you just did, Daniel.
Well, that's kind of you. It was an approximation of it. It was
Right.
It was a parrot mimicking what it's heard before, but thank you. Thank you. And Alfonso X was the king of what is now much of modern Spain in the years 1252 to 1284. And near the end of his reign in 1283, he had translated this, or produced, I guess it's some question about how much is translated, how much is actually new.
Yeah, definitely some of it's translation.
Yeah. This book called the Book of Games. Yeah, and so some of it was translated from Arabic. And I should say, I mean, neither Kevin nor I are experts on this, so don't take anything as definitive, but we've done some reading and looking into it as well. But so some of it was translated from the Arabic. Is that your understanding too, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is about chess, which I think started in India. Is that correct?
That sounds right to me.
I think it started in India, and then it got to the West, maybe through Arabs and Muslims.
Yeah.
And I even wondered if Spain, which at one point was conquered by the Moors, which are a Muslim group from
Northern
Africa, right?
Yeah.
Morocco, Africa
Northern
area.
Africa,
And I wondered if that at least is part of how chess gets to the West, is through that conquest and that mixing of cultures that came about.
Yeah, that might be.
And there's definitely a common culture in Spain between Christians, Muslims, and Jews who are all cohabitating and at times peacefully under Muslim rule in Spain. And so there's a similar architecture and art and style.
Yeah. That's one of the things I understand is... I didn't mean to talk over you, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I want you to.
Yeah, one of the things I understand was kind of characteristic and especially interesting about King Alfonso X, that he had this very ecumenical court, that there were Muslim scholars and Christian scholars and Jewish scholars, and that this certainly was not the only book of knowledge that was produced under him. There were books on various other subjects as well. I brought up the fact that just it was translated from Arabic because it reminds me a little bit of what the friend of our podcast, Ali Carrar, mentioned on a few episodes back when he talked about, how much kind of world knowledge was gathered together in some places in various Islamic
Baghdad
centers.
in various times and places.
Yeah. So, Kevin, you and I read an English translation of this book. It was translated by Sonia Moser-Golade. And basically, how we're going to be approaching this for our listeners, just kind of a super brief overview right now, and then we're going to kind of do some takeaways that Kevin and I have, just some responses or reactions to it. And so, so Kevin, I guess, it begins by kind of these introductory remarks, right, about like why games, right? Why are games important? And then he tells this interesting story, right, about this, according to the book, this Indian king, this king in India, who had three advisors, three wise men, or whatever. Yeah.
So there's these three wise men that report to the king in categories of what games are, and they connect it with certain virtues. And so there is chess, oriented around strategy, and it's a story from India, correct?
At least that's how King Alfonso reports it, yeah.
Yes, and so there is chess that is strategy, dice that is luck and fortune, and then tables, which I took, as I read, is kind of like a backgammon type game where you've got a board and dice, so it's kind of a marriage of the two. That is prudence, or we might call dice mitigation, so how to avoid bad rolls.
Yeah.
And that's the three that present. Well, I forget why. Is he asking what prompts them? Do you recall?
I think he's like asking, like what makes for kind of what makes for a good life, or what's most important in life, I think, or something like that. And the first one says brains is most important, and the second one says luck is most important, and the third one says
so it starts
prudence.
with the virtues and then shifts to the games.
And then they produce these games as kind of an illustration of their point that, or they bring forth these games to the king as an illustration of their point. The game that chess shows that brains is most important, dice shows that luck is most important, and then tables, or like you say, kind of we might say backgammon today, shows that a balance of the both both is most important, kind of.
And it's so cool because it makes me think of Euro type games as brains, where there's minimal luck and there's planning and strategy. Although chess, I guess, does have an Ameritrash idea of I have to eliminate you for me to win, so it's not quite the same. So, but the dice mechanic would be more of a Monopoly Ameritrash thing, where it's it can be a lot of luck, or the craps table, where it's just what numbers can you roll in what sequence, and that's what the book describes a lot of. And then the table games is a nice marriage of them. So it's cool that we still kind of think in those categories.
Yeah, it really is. After all these years that they still apply, it's cool to see and to hear.
Yeah, and of course we strategize, and that's part of life. We have luck and fortune, that some people get lucky in life and some people get unlucky, whether it's lottery ticket or, just having good timing, good luck, good fortune. And then the idea of mitigating disaster in the table games.
Yeah.
So that makes me think of the idea of insurance. Like, you keep insurance so if something bad happens, you're not wiped out in terms of value of your house or your car, or something like that.
That's a good,
So disaster mitigation.
That is a good parallel. Yeah,
and
I
I'm
like
bad at those types of games. I do have insurance, but I'm bad at those types of games because I get so excited about rolling the dice. And part of it, you do have to, what do you do if you get the worst possible roll? What are you going to do?
Right, yeah.
And so, like in Arc Nova, there's a little bit where you can, well, I guess there's not dice, but yeah, that's a bad example. Never mind.
No,
I guess if you're not paying attention in the card order, then the little X things are a way to mitigate what situation you're in.
Right, yeah.
That you can empower a card.
Those are little tokens that allow you to have a little bit more control over your circumstances, yeah.
And in theory, you could have mapped it out. I think most people can't map out, but so many turns ahead.
Yeah.
And so you get those X's that's probably where I was thinking. It's sort of an insurance that if you find yourself stuck, or there's a card, or I guess the luck is when what cards are dealt or come out, there's a card you particularly want, you might have it might help you avert the disaster of not getting that card or something. So yeah.
It does really parallel. Yeah, you're right. A lot of conversations I think we've had here on this podcast, but just in other circles too, in spiritual, religious matters. These questions of what can you control in your life? What do you have the ability to strategize for, to think about, or to think through? What can't you control in your life, and then how can you kind of bring those two things together? How can you kind of build upon what you can control in the face of what you cannot control.
Yeah. And it's easy to pick on the moralizing elements of some of the Victorian games, or even that they bring these things in. But I kind of disagree. Like, I think morality is so important, and even teaching children, opportunity. We all want our kids to be good people and to thrive in this world, and opportunities to teach that are not bad things.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what morality and how you teach it and how you deal with failure and things, but I'm sympathetic to connecting games with some sense of morality and goodness and fairness.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've watched some Shut Up and Sit Down video. They have some history with. There's a scholar in England that they've featured that's talked about some of the Victorian games.
Oh, you happen to remember that person's name? It's okay if not.
Her name is Ford Hyundai Escape Tire.
Nice.
No, I'm just looking out the window. I can't remember.
I have driven her cars too.
Yeah.
She's
Bechamel Grass Tree Bark.
Okay, that's fine. That's
remember.
fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
sorry.
No worries. No worries. Thank you.
I told you my RAM memory banks were low. No, I
You
can't.
did.
But if you look
You
in some of
did.
the history of board games, they featured her a time or two, and she, I think, maybe at one time as a PhD student, sort of studying these sorts of topics. And I appreciate her critiques, and it's fair to say, look how the Victorians were trying to inject ideas of gender and morality into everything. I get that, but I also, part of me as a parent, I'm like, maybe they're also just trying to make sure their kids were going to thrive and be just people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think as we've talked about before on this podcast, that games can be safe places where you practice life skills, and where you think through. They can be safe microcosms of the larger world to try things that some of them will work, some of them won't. Yeah, yeah. And like learning how to deal with loss and not winning and cooperating and yeah.
And actually, along those lines, one of the bits of Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and they do this in Architects as well, there are criminals you can use. Oh. And they can give you power-ups, but then they have certain negative consequences. So you really want to skate the element of going to the dark side of the Force, but not for too long.
Okay, interesting.
Because you'll get stuck, and then you can't do some things because you've hired too many criminals.
Interesting.
But a few criminals can be okay.
You can get a little bit. That's so interesting.
You played Architects, right?
Yeah, and there is yes. I remember
so
that.
it's that idea.
That.
You use the criminal stuff or the black market, and then you can't build the church at a certain point because you have.
If you go too far, then you're gone. Yeah. That's
There's
interesting.
a little bit of that there. I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, so then getting back to the book of games, from that point, then after kind of laying out this schematic for understanding games, these three categories of games, then the book goes on to basically catalog. I think I didn't count them, but I think I read 144 games that fall across those three categories, and then a few extra at the end. It struck me that this was kind of like the board game geek of the Middle Ages, right? That it was like, if you had a question of what a game was, you looked it up in Alfonso's Book of Games. And they were almost all of them, variations of chess and of dice and of tables, or backgammon, we would say, but then a few extra thrown in at the end. Some of those variations were really interesting, because the book is illustrated too, with these really fascinating illustrations, and like these massive chess boards, that have many, many more pieces than we do, and chess played with elephants and giraffes. I mean, not real
dice. They mentioned playing dice somehow, and I was not clear how you do that.
Yeah,
but I guess it takes some of the strategy out. But that also reminds you that the idea of new additions or expansions has been around for a long time. That somebody's going to play with the rules. Like, what if we did it this way? Or what if the elephant? And in fact, at this time in the Book of Games, there is no queen for chess.
I noticed that. Yeah, it was called, what was it? Like the fair?
It was called Daniel, I think.
I've not lived up to that name.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right. There was no queen. There was this, it was called, I forget the exact name, but it was like the banner holder or
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of an overview of the book. Because Kevin and I are going to kind of share some responses to it, but does that seem to capture the overview of it fairly well? Kevin, have you left anything out?
I think so. I mean, it does seem to focus on chess for the most part.
Yeah.
Probably because of the various chess problems you can do, which I remember as a kid, they were in the newspaper. If you have, how would you solve this scenario? How would you, play through this bit?
Yeah.
So, I appreciate the structure. And you're right about the Board Game Geek thing. It is kind of a ranking and a possibility and listing. So it's really, really pretty neat. And then it's got this comic book element that the art is connected with the text.
Yeah.
And both furthers the text. It illustrates but furthers the text as well. And can actually – there's this one scholarly article points out there's some jokes going on in the artwork. So it at times is suggesting something different from the words.
And as you pointed out to me in that article, there's a pretty wide diversity of people playing these games too in the illustrations. You know, it's men and women and people of all different skin hue, complexions, and backgrounds, and it was it's neat. It's interesting, but one group that's absent. But I'll get to that in my takeaways. One of my takeaways. So before we get to our takeaways, though, should we do a quick little game break, Kevin, just to talk about
game break.
A time for a game. We need a little ditty there. What's a game where we just kind of talk about maybe a game that we've especially been enjoying right now? And Kevin, what's a game you've been enjoying right now?
What's a game you know well because I stole it from you, and that's called Arc de Nueva.
Is that where it went?
Nova. Yes.
Yes, I love your command of Spanish.
Yes. Yeah, Arc Nova. I have taught it to the kids. Jenny hasn't played it yet. She protests the fact that we're always trying different games, and it annoys her. So I think she's holding out. She's like, no, we must play something I know. I'm tired of learning something new. But the kids, I had to strong arm one of them. I really had to push him. I kind of lied to him, actually. He's like, how long does a game take? And I was like, 40 minutes. I think he knew I was lying. But yeah, they all enjoyed it. It's such a great game, and it's ranked so highly now, despite being only out a year, which is pretty unusual.
What do you enjoy so much about it? And I agree, I love it.
It's just engine builders are always fun. So you're trying to build the zoo, and you get the little polyominoes, the little different shapes. There's just something. There's a real sense of progression and growth, even though I keep losing, so I'm not progressing in terms of a win. You just feel like you built something. Yeah. That's what I like. What do you like about it?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I also like how a couple things. I like the action selection mechanism. How you can, with just one or two restrictions, can pretty much choose any action you want to take. But the longer you wait to take an action, the more powerful it becomes. I think that's really clever. And I also like how it's really designed well to give you kind of this little steady stream of bonuses all the time. And yes. I love that. It's like, you just feel like you've got like a chain reaction almost every other turn, or almost every turn. You'll do something and that gets you this bonus, and that bonus allows you to do this. And I love that, that kind of, it feels fun and powerful. It feels neat.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got the actual animals on there.
Yeah.
So you're learning about them, and there's some thought behind that. And
yeah.
True. It's really, and I really don't like the theme at all. Just because I want to play a game, I usually want something escapist.
I remember you said that.
It's amazing how much I like it, given the lack of robots, lasers, or sorcerer supremes or something. Like I'm a child of the '80s, and I just really want something space driven.
Yeah, and that would be a retheme of that game: space and robots and.
Yeah, like what if you're collecting heroes from the Marvel multiverse or something?
Yeah.
So that would just really float my boat. But I get that this is much more approachable to all sorts of people, and I like the learning component, and I really do like it. It's not that I don't. I'm actually surprised how much I like it, given that you're like, oh, I have some birds. Yeah. Like, it's kind of lame in a way. You're like, oh.
Yeah, and the fact that as you said, the fact that the theme doesn't speak to you quite as much as other themes really, and yet you love it so much, really indicates what a good game it is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
There's not a adventure mystery thing to it. It really is sort of building a zoo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's been mine. What about you?
A game I've been trying out recently that I really, really love. It's an older one, but Hansa Teutonica. We got the Hansa Teutonica big box over Christmas, and Kristen got that for me, which I really appreciated. And I really like it. We talked before, I kind of like Euro games, which is for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with the term, it just kind of means, games where maybe a little bit less luck, a little bit kind of more strategy, and you often
don't like conflict.
Like moving little wooden cubes around or whatever. Yeah. But what I like, the challenge with a lot of Euro games is they're often very, very long, and you have a lot of setup, a lot of teardown. But this doesn't have either of those things. It's a really thinky, strategic Euro game, but it's pretty short. It has very little setup time, very little teardown time. You don't have to put a lot of things on the board to set up. And there is, what I really like about this, and we've talked about this before, there's some what you might call negative player interaction, which is you do something that maybe benefits you, but it harms the other person in some way. Mm-hmm. And as a general rule, I'm not a super big fan of those. I often end up kind of feeling guilty or whatever. But what I love about this is you in this game, the negative player interaction, it benefits you and it does something negative to the other person. But whenever you do it to them, they get like this super bonus that actually benefits them even more than, not every turn, but often it benefits them even more than the bad thing you did to them. And so I have less qualms about doing it, because what it means is that I'm actually helping this person a lot by doing this action. And it's fun. It's a really fun game. So I love Hansa Teutonica. I'm eager to play it with some larger groups of people. Anyway, that's mine.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I have not tried it, but I've seen it talked about, and I would love to try it.
Next time we get together, we'll have to do
next time
Space Ark Nova and Hansa Teutonica in the Marvel Universe. Well, back to the Book of Games. We're going to close up the episode with just a little time here where Kevin and I just kind of share some responses to it, some reactions to it, kind of go back and forth a little bit. Kevin, would you like to begin? What's one reaction takeaway that you had to the Book of Games?
Well, one I have is that the medieval period, they had fun. So I think in our larger cultural imagination, it was very brutal or just super religious, or, like the Puritans almost. We don't think about them being real human beings that were playing games and having, romantic affairs, which is what romantic events in their lives, like which is what some of the images are depicting here. Evidently, that men are looking at women, or they're playing games, or there's jokes. So it just makes them very human, and I like that. The colors, the liveliness, the different people from different walks of life. It's a rare glimpse of probably, the medieval period was much more lively and interesting than we tend to depict it as cold castles and people walk around amok and then getting killed in wars. And while that's true, it wasn't true for everybody.
That's such a great point. Yeah, you're right. We remember what the historians record. We remember the wars, the battles, the plagues, and the day-to-day joys of living, for the most part, are not often written down, playing games with your friends or things like that. Yeah.
There was it's a very adult show, but there was a show at one time, I think on HBO or something, called The Tudors, and it did a good job of this as well, that the castle was filled with tapestry and candles, and they were dancing and music, and it just made it feel very homey. And when we visit one of those castles today, the tapestries have rotted away. We don't have the things that would have made it alive.
Yeah.
So if you think of walking in a house that's not decorated, or all the decorations have molded and gone away, it would be a very sad place. But that's not how they lived.
That's such a great insight. I love that.
Yeah. And these are the people that created gargoyles. Like, they were fun. They were funny. They put gargoyles on their churches. They carved little monsters sticking their tongues out outside the churches.
Yeah.
Inside the churches, they made little jokes and images. And the Green Man, which is like this weird myth in England, they put those in their churches. They were like, it's fine. They were not as hung up as we are today, I think. They liked a good monster. They drew monsters in their books and dragons, and I think it's a cooler time to give them credit.
That's
what about you?
What a great insight, and an insight that can't come from just everyone, but thanks for sharing your church historian eye on that. I love that. That's
just
great.
Me watching stuff.
No.
Yeah. On a side note, it's the Iron Maiden, the supposedly medieval torture device. Evidently, the Victorians just made that up.
Really?
Yes. So some of our ideas are what the Victorians thought. They were entranced by the Middle Ages, but they made it into this thing that is not always accurate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's the Victorian
great
mindset.
Insight. Well, my first takeaway is related to that, right? I think very similar. One of my first reactions to this book was how strange the concept of it, the premise of it would be if we applied it today. Like how would we react if a world leader, a president or a prime minister said, "Now I will produce a book about games." We can't even really fathom that, how strange that is. And I think, and so I wonder, what does that say? And it could probably say a lot of things, maybe say a lot of things about us too, in our age. I think it may say something about Alfonso, and I would leave that to historians much more learned than I about what it says about Alfonso, but maybe, his approach to learning and ecumenism and things like that. But I think it also says something, this is kind of what relates, I think, to your point about games and the role of games at that time period, that there's a certain kind of value and respect placed upon them that might surprise us today. That they were important enough for a head of state to produce a whole book about.
Right.
Whereas today we think they're just throwaway. We think, I'm sure probably some of our listeners have this experience, and maybe you too, Kevin. I may mention to someone that I'm really into board games, and a lot of times people are really interested and fascinated, but a lot of times people kind of kind of choke down a giggle. It's kind of like it just doesn't seem serious enough for our world today. But I love that. I mean, it was important enough for a head of state to write a book about, and that gets back to what I was mentioning earlier. One particular population that I think was absent from those illustrations, at least I don't remember. So don't quote me on this. You might go back into the book and find this, and I might be wrong. But at least for the most part, those illustrations and in his writings, there's very little said about children playing games. I don't recall that in pictures. I don't recall that in. It's all about adults playing games.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, whereas today, I think, we'd have to almost kind of offer this apologetic. Games can be for adults too, things like that, because we think primarily of children today. But he didn't. That wasn't even an issue. It's like a whole book about adults playing games, and it was important enough for a head of state to write it. And I think it's really cool.
Right.
So that's
and that's just what's popular in our culture. That right now, or it's how our culture views things. So games are, and even comic books are thought of as more for children. Yeah. Although all the Marvel movies have kind of shown that's not quite true, because lots of adults are buying tickets and enjoying them. Yeah. But we label it that way. But meanwhile, it's things such as sports, like American football, that's okay to watch, even though that's just another game. Right. And half of it's commercials anyway. But that's socially acceptable. But to play games is seen as strange. But you're right. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Thank you.
Pastime, yeah. And I've been revisiting Bernard Suits, and one of his arguments is games are not just about leisure from work. Games are, as I've revisited it, that's the takeaway for part of what The Grasshopper is in that wonderful book, that if we think of games as just an escape from work, then we're missing the point of what games are.
They are an end unto themselves. And
correct. They're an end unto themselves.
Yeah. That's such a great book. Yeah. I the more I come back, a great book, when the more you revisit it, the more you like it. So, yeah. Well, what about you, Kevin? What's another takeaway?
Right. There aren't kids. There aren't kids. In fact, there's nobility, and there's kings and military guys depicted playing. There's men and women playing, which that was a rare way for the sexes to mingle, and various races and peoples and religions. I don't care about your God. Let's play chess.
That's right.
So we can come together around chess and
exactly.
Yeah.
We may not be able to come together in how we worship, but we can come together over a game. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, yeah. So how about you, Kevin? Yeah. What's another takeaway you have?
Gosh. I like how it's so inclusive. So it does show various people from walks of life. And he even starts out the book saying, hey, there's different kinds of fun activities, and some of them involve, say, hunting. But let's point out, as the book says, or as this book of games, some people can't hunt because they may be women, or they're older, or they're sick, or it's nighttime. So games are a way that we can enjoy gaming, and it's more accommodating of everybody. So it kind of states that from the start. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. You're connecting it to falconry and hunting, which is, or, that's a kind of gaming situation where you follow certain rules, but the outcome's uncertain. But then he's saying that these games are even better than sports, than hunting for him. Because,
they're more open and inclusive and accessible to folks. Yeah,
and he names all the different people that can participate in a way that's sport. Once it's dark, you can't really hunt unless you got flashlights.
Yeah. I love that. I love that section where he says, like, even if you're in prison, you can play games. And he says, even if you're on a ship in the middle of a storm, you can play games. It's like, no matter what, you can play games. I love that.
It could get tricky during a storm, though. Check, no, and the board slides off.
Where did my elephant go? No, there it is.
My elephant go? It's on my bottom. How did I sit on my elephant? Wait, and then you have 4 elephants. I'm not cheating, sir. All these elephants underneath your chair.
That's a great insight. Yeah. He really does celebrate that at the beginning, doesn't he? Just how open and accessible and inclusive.
There is a love that comes through it. Yeah, and who actually wrote it, whether the king, he just put his stamp on it. But it's still, it is a celebration in a lot of ways. And I those points, from 740 years or whatever, 740 years beyond the grave, they still resonate with us today. That's just awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I love it.
Yep. You got one more?
Yeah. You know what? Actually, I had a couple others, but but one of them was just what you said. So I'm going to skip over that one. But I had also that point. I love how he said, just how accessible games are. That above every other kind of form of entertainment, they are the most accessible to the most people. I guess the only other one I had then was just talking about. He begins by talking about games are a reflection of God's desire for us and for the world, and I love kind of that theological grounding at the beginning. I may quote a little bit here, but he starts off by saying, because God wanted that man, we'd say human beings today, because God wanted the human beings have every manner of happiness in God naturally, so or in ourselves naturally, so that human beings could suffer the cares and troubles when they come to them. Therefore, humans have sought out many ways that they could have this happiness completely, and wherefore they found and made many types of play. And then goes on to illustrate the types of play, and then says games are the best, or sitting games. He said sitting games are the most accessible. And I love that grounding at the very beginning, that this isn't something outside of God's dream for humanity or intent for the human experience, but that games and play are this essential part that God has dreamed for us from the beginning. Alfonso said, as a way to relieve suffering, things like that. And certainly that's true. I think, as we talked about in other episodes, I think we might argue it's more than just to relieve suffering, but that's certainly a big part of it.
But it also says to prepare, right? As if it helps you deal with that. So it may not, I've wondered in that text there, is it meaning you are distracted from the suffering, or does it mean you understand the suffering a little better because you've, right? Like it's sort of conditioned you to.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah.
That's where we would need a scholar to really pick apart the text. But yeah, no, I'm with you. That's quite a vision of what games can be.
Yeah. So that's the other one. That was the main other one I had. We've touched upon the couple others I had. How about you? Do you have anything else?
The scholarly article commented about how the images include humor and gesture, and even some bits like the evil eye, like somebody's taking a move and someone's trying to, avoid bad luck or something. There's a lot of stuff in the images that's very interesting that there's even some hints that there might have been this story or urban legend that somebody is, if they win the game, they get the girl. So there's some idea that some of that's going on. So that's why a woman is watching kind of fearfully the game, because she doesn't know if her true love is going to be able to win her.
Okay.
So there's some women. So people aren't. So in the images, they're looking in interesting places. They might be looking at the winner of the game. They might be looking at someone else. They might be looking at the play. They might be like what's about to happen. So there's a lot of the artwork is very intentional.
Yeah.
So sometimes the winner is being served refreshments, and that's a clue of who's going to win the game.
I see. I missed that. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's a long and deep article, but it's very interesting how she picks apart the significance of the artwork.
I appreciate your having shared that with me. Yeah, thank you.
A lot of it's guesswork, but that it's fun. There's a lot going. It's not just pictures, as well as the cool bit that they almost do like a blowout of the board, so the perspective is wrong. So, but the point is, you can see the board and what they're doing. It's not just an illustration of the events. It's you can actually analyze the gameplay.
Yeah. Every illustration is kind of like what we might call like an overhead camera today for like the content creators of board games.
Picture, overhead camera. They're doing that in the Middle Ages. So again, these were crafty, clever, smart people. They may have thought the world was flat. They didn't understand nuclear fission and fusion, but heck, what they knew and they could do, they did it well. So
yeah.
Tip of the hat to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was that's a great point. Yeah, I remember there was one illustration where they were like men were playing a dice game, and I think they were like stripped down to their pants or something, and the caption said like or the scholarly analysis like, this indicates they were gambling in this game and they've lost all their clothes as they were.
Yes. They fed everything down to their clothes. Yeah, that's really funny. They're like, I got to win it back. Let me take my shirt off.
Give me back my tunic or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the king, you just can picture the king like, well, show me your latest page. And he's like, oh, that's really funny, dude.
Right.
Bruh, that's funny. Bruh.
Right. Well, that's great, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, great insights from you.
This was your idea, actually, and I would never have gone as in-depth without your prodding.
Well,
I'm so glad I did.
Thank you. Well, you're kind. Thank you. And I appreciate that. I should give due credit to, if you're interested in learning more about this kind of subject, there's a book called Parlet's History of Board Games by David Parlet. I'm holding up to the video, though I know you can't see it. You're listening to the podcast. This is formerly the Oxford History of Board Games, and it's just jam-packed with all sorts of this kind of stuff. But he regularly cites Alfonso's manuscript in the book as this really invaluable resource for understanding medieval games. So yeah, if you'd like to learn more, Parlet's History of Board Games is where I first learned about it too. So,
and I'll link the videos I was discussing about Victorian board games down below.
Great.
Thank you. Parlet's. Yes, and next week.
Well, we have a special guest next week. We are welcoming another podcaster who also explores religion and board games frequently. Dan Thoreau. Am I saying his name right there, Kevin?
I don't know if it's Thoreau or Thurrott. I've heard it at least said Thurrott, but I'm not sure. We're going to find out. Okay, well, I apologize if Dan is listening and I mispronounced your name. I'm sorry. But yeah, Kevin, you've reached out to him, and he's going to be a part of our episode and next week, and he's going to be talking about board games as devotion and some other subjects as well. Kevin, what background and things. He does a great newsletter, website, and podcast called Space Biff, BIFF. That evidently comes from, the comic books, and they punch each other like pow, biff, bam. So it's like, what would that sound like in space? So Space Biff, I think it's a very unique and cool name. So he's a well-respected reviewer and thinker online, and we're excited to hear from him. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
And if people want to get a hold of us, Kevin, what are some ways that people can interact with us?
We are on Instagram, Board Game Faith. We've got an awesome newsletter that has lots of nice little tidbits. It comes out every other week, and you can sign up for that through our link tree. It's the easiest way, linktr.ee/boardgamefaith.net/DanielIsAwesome.com. Semicolon.
Kevin is even awesomer.
/mail to info@boardgamefaith.com. So you can also just email us. So check us out there, Instagram and the newsletter. Emails come out every other week. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate your giving up a little bit of your time of your day to hang out with us and think about history and board games and God. And we appreciate you all more than we can say. Thank you so much.
That's it. Yep. Thanks, Daniel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.